Psychic Medium Stories. Hey everyone, Bonnie and I today are going to be sharing with you guys 2 stories each about our experiences, me as a clairvoyant, Bonnie as a medium. What we're going to do is we're going to share a childhood experience that sort of, awakened us to realize that there might be a little bit more that's going on in our brains than what we originally thought, and an experience at our desks, something that we did in our industry, a session, an experience that we had in our profession. Okay. So don't forget to like and subscribe. And we really hope that you enjoy this particular series. We're going to be sharing once a month where we're going to share 2 stories each. And this is our first one. So are we ready to start with Psychic Medium Stories? Ready?
Yes. Let's do it.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to start. So how do you feel about this, beautiful? How about, and you can decide if we want to change this, but I'm thinking I'll do one story and then you can do one story and then I'll do one story and then you can do one story. Does that
Brilliant. Sound good? Love it. Yes.
Love it. Okay, so I'm just going to share with you all in advance my 2 stories and Bonnie's 2 stories. My story is one of my stories is going to be from childhood, and my second story is going to be about a case that I solved. And Bonnie is going to do the exact same thing. So you do not want to miss these stories. Okay. Yeah. So the first one. Now, before I share this one, I will at some point share the very first clairvoyant experience I ever had. But with my dad crossing over and stuff recently, I'm way too overwhelmed for that one today. Yeah. So I'll share that another day. But there was this time. So I was in school, and I don't know what it was like for you, but for me, they were constantly having the infirmary became my favorite place because I just couldn't function, just couldn't handle all the energies. And so I'd constantly be sent into the infirmary to have a rest. And I got to the point where it was the only place I could sleep. It was sort of the safest place that I felt. So that's where I slept because I didn't sleep at night. So this particular story, I'm thinking it was probably grade 3, grade 4. I know for sure it was RJ Hockey in Airdrie that I was at. So it was elementary for sure. I'm thinking grade 3, grade 4. I had just had a nap in the infirmary. So they just had me in for a nap for a couple of hours in the infirmary. I had a breakdown in class. I got a breakdown in my homeroom. And so I'd just come out of my nap, and there was we were doing a gymnasium thing where, when we were kids and the whole school would get together in the gymnasium. And
the big event, school event.
Yeah. Don't even remember what the event was. Everybody was talking. But so I was sitting with my class on the floor. And I started to rock and shake. I remember this so clearly. I started to rock and shake, and I was shaking, like my whole body was shaking. And the kid sitting beside me, who dealt with Carlin's issues many times because all of my classmates did, right? Sitting beside me, he's like, "Oh, are you okay? Are you okay?" And he's trying to catch the attention of a teacher. And as he's trying to catch the attention of a teacher, I start screaming and crying in the middle of the gymnasium. I am in the middle of the gymnasium. And I am screaming and crying because in my world, in my existence, the gymnasium disappeared. And I am watching my mom have a major accident in front of her store. So she slipped on something, and I'm watching her head slam against the ground, and I am losing it because my whole life I had major, major fears of one of my family members dying. And so I'm watching this all unfold, and I am screaming at the top of my lungs in the middle of a gymnasium, like principals running to me, teachers are running to me. They're trying to get me out of the room as fast as possible. I'm flailing. I'm screaming at them. I'm like, "Go save my mom. Go find my mom. My mom's hurt. Go find my mom." I'm screaming directions, right? And this whole time, like in between, I'm telling them what's happening. I'm like, nobody's found her yet. And I'm losing it. And it was such a traumatic experience. I'm just going to share this, guys, with you. So first, I'm going to back up and share with you that it was about 20 or 30 minutes later, they still had me in the office. And I can't remember who it was that showed up, but one of my family members showed up to come and get me because my mom was in the hospital. She had had a major accident in front of her store. She had slipped and had concussions, and they questioned broken ribs, and it was very, very scary. And just this will tell you what kind of trauma trigger this will have for somebody like us. It was... Never mind, because I just lost it. I thought it was important. It was important. I don't know why it's gone again. It might come back.
It'll come
Anyways,
back.
it'll come. Everything
Everything goes in
comes.
and out all the time. It's how it works.
If it helps you all, being clairvoyant basically means I've had Alzheimer's since I was born. That's basically. So that's my child story, and it actually turned out
Oh.
exactly like I described. And even though my teachers and principal and stuff had experienced my shit before, they like everybody's just staring at me like I've lost my ever loving mind, right?
Mhm.
Of course I had, but how could I have possibly seen that? So that's my first
Yeah.
story. Tag, you're it.
Oh
Beautiful.
my gosh. And when you look at, there's so many stories when
Mm.
you begin to consider, and that's what I'm sitting as I'm listening to your story and totally looking at, my own life and in how it never felt like I fit in. And I was always experiencing a different world in the middle of other people
Yeah.
experiencing reality. Right. And so
Yep.
that always, it really, it's really hard in that moment to even feel, I mean, one, you're
Yeah.
not understanding it because you're so young and naive, and two, it's very scary in the experience. Mine isn't so much in terms of a validating experience like what you said, as you had, the loved one come and being able to, that was exactly what had happened to your mom. Mine is more in helping people to understand where we look at negative energy or entities or lower, we can call them lower
Mm-hmm.
vibration, because it is a part of it. Lower vibration
Yep.
does attract and magnify into other experiences. And I grew up in a very tumultuous childhood. As you know, my father was alcoholic. There was a lot of domestic violence. There was a lot of just, I mean, it's a very big trauma story. So I'm not going to get
Yeah.
into that. But because of it, being an energy sensitive and a medium, growing up in a household that was a container of that hostile, aggressive energy, it attracted those kinds of spirits and those kinds of
I bet it
energies
did.
into the home. And so for me, you talked about not sleeping at night. I was
Mm.
always afraid to go to sleep at night.
Oh
I
yeah.
was always propping up pillows around me, trying to create a little bit of a barrier. I was always, I mean, it wasn't just a matter of being afraid of somebody being under my bed. It was the fact of knowing they were under my bed, and they were beside my bed, and they were sitting on my bed, and they were on top of me. They were everywhere. And so I actually had, so going to sleep was a rare thing. Or if I
So
did sleep,
scary.
I never had a solid sleep. And for a lot of mediums, this is a case. They don't even realize, even for women, this isn't about hormones. This isn't, I mean, do hormones play a part of it as you get older? Absolutely. But I'm going to tell
Sure.
you, I don't know a medium anywhere, or a psychic or a clairvoyant or anyone who
Mm-hmm.
sleeps through the night, because the
Mm-hmm.
energy of and the vibration of because our ego goes to sleep, and because this now becomes this opportunity when we're quote unquote available. So it doesn't
Yep.
become easy for us to get a good night's sleep. It's just almost it's like improbable even.
Drugs are my
So
friends, my friends.
right, right. You're like
I
totally,
cannot tell a lie. Drugs are my
yeah,
friends, my friends. Yep,
yeah, like I'm just
hands
like,
down.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so, there were a lot of things that happened in my home that really were very scary, made me fear my connection to the other side,
Mm.
because I had actually had more experiences with dark energies than what I did with those individuals who had crossed over and were fully coming back from the light. So my experiences in that, were things like, even going downstairs into our basement, which was like one of the worst places I hated to go, because I literally felt like I was walking down into hell. That was the
Yeah.
exact experience. There were all these tortured souls. There were all these people crying. There were all these people, grabbing hold of me and grabbing hold of me to the point where I actually had physical altercation. I actually would have scratches on my arms and scratches on my ankles and things from being drawn at, and again, these like what would be victim spirits that were aggressive in trying to get my attention. They weren't,
Wow.
I don't know and understand that now as an adult. They weren't trying to hurt me. They were just trying to get to the light. They were seeking the
Yep.
help. I didn't know I could be the help at that
Right.
infant age, but apparently I was. But the scariest experience that I had, and it was one that really was what was just it's embedded in me. When we talk about trauma, when we talk about, even as mediums and psychics, we have trauma from the experiences we've had with the non-physical, what we've witnessed as seen, what we've directly experienced, in addition to what can be the, let's call it the normal life experiences of trauma. But there can be this
Yep.
whole energetic side of it. And I was one night when I went to sleep, again, it was one of those nights where I just couldn't fall asleep. There had been, I think my parents had been fighting. My dad had been drinking. It was a very volatile evening. There was a lot of stress throughout the day. So when I went to bed, I was going to sleep with that energy. That's a part of right? So when I went to sleep in that, I was probably sleeping for maybe if I'm lucky, it's a couple of hours. That's generally the rule for me. I get a really good couple hours of good sleep, and then I'm stirred and woken up. And then at that point, and there was this thing standing at the foot of my bed, and it was very tall, very wiry kind of looking, and just it almost like just for lack of a way, I was like feasting in energy and looking at me like this feasting of in it. And I was really drawn, like shocked by this thing. And the next thing I know, it was climbing on top of me and it was actually choking me. And I had to have a physical battle in my bed to try to get this thing off of me. Now, in that moment, again, when we look at Catholicism, there's so much within it that has led me to my faith. But even at that moment, understanding that the Our Father is the most powerful prayer that you could ever say, whether you are involved in a doctrine or a religion. It is a prayer that has been said thousands and thousands and thousands of years. It's very potent and powerful. It was the only prayer that I knew. And all I could do was try to get out the words of the Our Father while this thing was on top choking me. And I was forgetting the prayer. I was forgetting words to the prayer. I couldn't hardly articulate that prayer. And I was very much awake. And so I finally got this thing off of me. It repelled and it got off of me. And so then I settled back down to sleep. But then what happened about an hour, 2 hours later, is I had the blankets pulled off my bed and I was literally grabbed by the ankles and I was flipped around and flipped over in my bed and flipped and flipped and flipped. And I went into, again, that prayer. And it was after that night that it scared the bejesus out of me. And two was the very fact that I never went to bed ever again without saying the Our Father before I went to bed. Ever.
I think we should be thankful you ever went to bed again, because had that have been my experience, I'd have never gone to bed again. That would have been it. I'm
Right.
awake for the rest of my life.
Yes. Yeah.
Be a very short life, but
Yeah.
still.
So I truly believe, and this is, it's, you maybe have heard it said before, but I believe that I personally needed to experience the dark in order to know that the light existed. And I also needed to experience the dark, of course, so that I could, of course, help the people I get to help in this, through this work now too.
Question for you.
Yeah.
Because you've been teaching mediumship, just like I've been teaching how to enhance your intuition. You've been teaching mediumship and intuition, all of that for years too.
Yes.
Both do it in our own different ways. I think most people in this industry probably teach it. Let's be honest.
Yeah. I
But
think we have a responsibility to teach it. I think if we have it, we have a
I
responsibility
agree.
to share the wisdom. Yeah.
I agree. So, question for you: would you agree, or do you believe or not believe? Has your experience shown? I guess is
Yeah.
the question I'm asking. That for those of us that are born very aware, so really connected to our souls, which is really what intuition and the ability to communicate with the loved ones.
Yeah.
I believe. I mean, seriously, stop talking for you, because that's ridiculous. But you can tell I'm used to being the boss in charge, right? Like, can you tell I've never actually worked with anyone before in my life?
It's all
I have
good.
an attitude problem you can't even imagine. But anyways, in my experience, I've noticed, or I've seen, that those of us that are born quite open and don't necessarily force ourselves to have to be open as adults, because we had experience as a child.
Yeah.
My experience, it's always, in anyone that I've ever spoken to about this, the first experiences are always dark, negative, and traumatizing.
Mhm.
Have you noticed that
I
at
would
all?
say a vast majority of them are. I of course have worked with some
Yeah.
individuals who've never encountered anything scary whatsoever. They've only ever had, right? So that in and of itself is a privilege that is not had by many. But there
Or
is
me.
the vast majority of people in this industry absolutely have a story. They have a story of something very challenging, very dark,
Yeah.
very traumatic that they have had to go through in order to wake up or understand and utilize their connection. Absolutely. Yeah.
See, and I've
Absolutely.
always thought that that's part of the universe's energy. Before we go into our cases that we're going to talk
Yes.
about, I've always thought that that was a part of the universal energy or the world energy versus the universal energy because, religion, religions,
Mm-hmm.
society, again, they don't want you to, if you can listen to your instinct, your intuition, and your inner awareness, you can't be controlled. So,
Right.
the energy on the world is this is negative, this is bad, this is wrong. If you
Yep.
can see this, there's something wrong with you.
Yep.
I've always believed that that's why.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't have to hear the words to feel energy, right?
Right.
So I've always believed that that's why our experiences starting out are so scary and can be so negative. And
Mm-hmm.
like I've solved a lot of amazing cases, like happy ending. The one I'm going to share with
Yes.
you today is a happily ever after ending, right?
Yeah.
I've done a lot of things that are happily ever after, but I know my first experiences were all based on something bad. The visions I was getting was someone was
Yeah.
dying, someone was in an accident, you know, someone was lost. Like,
Yeah.
and and even as I'm talking about this, yes, I believe that that's the world energy, but I also think because that's a stronger energy but it's a stronger energy because our world is very negative energy. So the
Yes.
scary, the negative, the horror, the
Yeah.
thriller version, the drama,
Yeah.
tends to be the first thing we're drawn to. So I think that plays a
Absolutely.
role in why we have those
Absolutely.
experiences too.
I absolutely does. It's that fear-based consciousness that exists
Yeah,
around it, which really dictates the other part of the equation. And it's a part of, in my programs and what I really help mediums to really unravel
yeah,
are the conditioned and inherited beliefs that are like
yeah,
that. The things that we carry that again in understanding based on Catholicism, based on the doctrine, based on that was by law of attraction. That was
yeah,
coming to me based on that structure. And so being able
yeah,
to heal the beliefs and being able to look at what that conditioning is can alter
yep,
and shift the relationship we have with the other side. But I was so
100%.
indoctrined into it that was happening on a subconscious level. And of course, in the infancy of what that was, I had no awareness to shift or change anything within it. So
Mhm.
it absolutely has to do with that.
But
Hands
I got
down.
to tell you, just on a separate note, I'm so glad. Not that I wish anything bad on you, honey, but the selfish part of me is so glad you had that experience and not me because I'd never spoken.
Yeah, I know.
I mean,
I
I'm
know.
not meaning to throw you in front of the
I
guillotine before me intentionally. I would,
You're glad,
but
but
it's
you
not
would.
intentional.
And you probably have in another lifetime.
I probably have once or twice, I'm sure. No, 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 take
Exactly.
Lonnie. It's fine. She's ready to
Yeah,
go.
exactly. I
I mean, in
sacrificed
fairness,
Lonnie.
I love my husband more than anybody on the planet. I've been pushing him in front of me when the gun shows up. And I
Exactly
love him.
right.
So bad, right? It's funny because everybody else, as they're watching, is listening, going, "Oh, I would too," even though
Yeah,
they're going to be like, "Oh,
exactly. They
Carolyn,
are.
you are such a bad person." So,
No, they're going,
for
thank
somebody
God
not
I'm not
sorry,
the
I'm
only
really
one.
thankful. Sorry, not sorry. I'm really thankful that you're the one who experienced that,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And I just go ahead.
I was just saying that's a big piece of it. And so being able
Yeah,
to, at the time, I mean, it was very traumatic, but understanding
yeah,
the fear consciousness that exists there, what was
yeah.
impacting and what was drawing that experience, it had to do with the energy of the home. It had to do with the
Yeah,
vibration. It was
it
all
did.
energy, right? And then of
Yeah,
course, based on what by law of attraction was being
yeah,
called in. Yeah.
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 Woo,
Yeah.
doozies.
I know,
Okay,
right? Okay, to your case, you
okay.
go.
So I'm going to go to my case, but just really quickly, I did remember that thing that I forgot about. So you know how I was saying my first experience was the vision, or one of my
Yes.
experiences was the vision of my mom, and her head was bleeding on the pavement and stuff.
Yes.
So when my husband had a major seizure, I've been married for a long time, and it's been years ago, of course. And so I was married for a long time, and my husband had a seizure. In his seizures, he catapults in the air, and he was on the ground, and blood was pouring out of his head. And all I seen in my head, and I'm in my 40s at the time, is
Oh,
the vision of my mom, and they had to call a second ambulance for me because they thought I was having a heart attack because of the trauma response, right? So
yes.
gotta tell
Yeah.
you guys, these things stick with us. Like
It's
they really
real.
do.
It's
It's
real.
real.
Yes.
Okay, so my case. So I'm actually going to share with you guys the very first case I ever solved, and it was completely unintentional. I had no idea I could do it at the time. Completely
Yeah.
unintentional and was an accident that turned out to have the most amazing results. So I'm in a session with a client so many years ago. So I'm in a session with a client and she's crying. She had booked her session long before this actually happened. And then this happened that morning and she was going to cancel her session and thought, I'm just going to go through with it. I need, I want to talk to a clairvoyant anyway. So we're about 5 minutes into the session and she's like, I'm so sorry. I'm just so upset because my brother is missing. There was an avalanche. He was skiing with his friends and there was an avalanche and he's gone missing. And I looked at her like just straight face, just like a normal day in my world. I looked at her, I'm like, no problem. As soon as you can tell me what blue's sticking into the snow, I'll tell you where your boys are. And her jaw drops. And she's like, what? And I'm like, well, do you want to find the boys? Like, I can, like, just tell me what blue is sticking out of the snow. And she's like, oh my God, I need to pause you for a second. And I'm like, why? She's like, my brother has blue bottom skis. Can you just stop? So she puts me on pause. She calls, because I, of course, can't talk. Otherwise, I'm going to get all the information out.
Right.
So she calls whoever it is that's a part of the search, and she's like, "Look, I'm in a psychic reading, and she picked up on blue skis sticking out of the snow right away." And as you can imagine, I mean, police are so much fun to deal with when it comes to psychic. So,
I know.
Of course, there's police officers in this conversation of "Give me a break," blah blah blah, and she starts yelling at them. She's like, "You have nothing to lose." Okay, so understandable. She's on pause and away from me. I am flipping out because I'm having this vision of them, one of them, it's 3 men. I'm having this vision of one of them, he can't move his legs. He can't move his legs. And so in my vision, I'm not understanding. I'm so confused because I can see that he's paralyzed, but there's something that's not new. And I don't understand that. Like, I feel like the reason that his legs can't move doesn't have to do with the avalanche. Like, I don't feel like it was an avalanche, but that's all I can keep seeing, right?
Yeah.
So she gets back on and finally she's got somebody on with her and gets back on. And it was a police officer that was on the phone with her. And I'm bawling. And she's like, what's going on? I'm like, I don't know how to tell you guys this. Like, I'm so sorry. I thought they were all fine, but one of them can't move his legs. And I'm so confused because it just doesn't make any sense to me that the avalanche did that. She's like, no. Stop. He's paralyzed from the waist down. One of the guys he's been paralyzed from the waist down for years. He still skis. It's not because of the accident. And now this police officer is flipping out because I got this so that it would be something that they could catch on to be like,
yes,
right?
That she's
so
that
now,
she's the real deal. That she's the real
deal, right?
Yeah.
Blue sticking out of the snow obviously didn't do it. Paralysis did. So I'm like, I keep getting these 3 men and one of them can't move their legs. And he's like, okay, I'm listening. Like, tell me what to do. Right now he's all in. Tell me what to do. And so I'm talking about everything. And then I'm like, okay. I'm like, there's this guy in the rescue, and I think he's a police officer, and he's not wearing the police jacket. He's wearing this big, heavy, down-filled jacket. Like, it's huge. It's not the uniform jacket. And he's like, well, you lost me now because there's no way one of my police officers wouldn't be wearing the jacket. I'm like, I'm telling you, this is what he's wearing, and we need to find him. He is right, like, meters away from where these boys are. Get on your damn mic. Get on your radio and find out who this is. He's like, it's not possible. It is not possible. You're full of crap. You had me at the paralysis, but that could have been a fluke. You're completely full of it. There is no way one of my police officers are not wearing his uniform jacket. And I got so frustrated. I'm like, fine, maybe it's a different rescuer. I don't care. Get on the radio, right? So then she yells at him. She's like, this is my brother we're talking about. Get on the radio. You're losing it. So he gets on the radio. He's like, look, you guys, chances of this is impossible, but is any of you not wearing your uniform jacket? 2 seconds later, beep. Hey, boss, detective or RC, lieutenant, whatever, blah, 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 blah. He's like, I'm wearing my dark gray down-filled goose ski jacket that's really, really big and puffy because it's freaking cold up here.
Yeah.
And as he's saying it, the police officer that's dealing with me drops his radio. Like, now he drops his radio.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so now that we're done arguing, and I guided this kid, because, I mean, now to me, he's a kid. He's a kid,
right?
I guided this man, really fair, I call everybody kids. I guided this police officer straight to the 3 men.
Wow.
And they were airlifted out.
Wow.
Fully saved. Everything was great. As it turns out, one of the wives was pregnant and she hadn't told him. And I did in the conversation. So I was like, please say congratulations to him, to the baby. And they went, and the clairvoyant who found you says, congratulations for your baby. And he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then is in the hospital and finds out that his wife is pregnant.
Aww.
It was such an amazing. So I got a phone call from them from the hospital thanking me for saving them.
Yeah.
The gentleman that was paralyzed called me to tell me about his accident and the story of why he was paralyzed, because he heard that I had cried and was so overwhelmed. All three of them have been to visit me once since then,
Oh my
because this was like
gosh.
almost 30 years ago. So I was probably only in this for about a year or 2 years. This was over 30
Wow.
years ago.
Yes. Yes.
And I have letters from them all thanking me, and I've worked with that particular officer in charge now probably 2,000 or 3,000 times.
Wow.
Yeah,
Amazing. Amazing.
that was
But
good.
isn't
It
it
was
just
good.
it? It's like that's just we have to hold so steadfast in terms of what we're
Mm,
seeing, what we're getting, even though we have people coming at and saying it's not possible, you're making
mhm.
it up, you're full of shit, whatever it is. We have to hold our own. We have to, because this
Oh,
is like unbelievable of what can happen
oh,
when we
yeah,
do. I mean, look, you saved 3 people's lives
yeah.
that day. Yeah.
1,000%. And honestly, they were right underneath a little peak that was actually going to break again. They'd have been dead
Wow.
within an hour. They would have been completely, because it was a crack of the mountain that was going to drop right where they were, because they were in this little cove, and that
Amazing.
cove was going to get closed in completely. Right.
Wow.
So,
Wow, wow, wow.
but also, and you're going to share yours right away.
Yeah.
Like, so if any of you ever go to an intuitive and they start to give you a lot of attitude in their session, like, listen to what I'm telling you. This
Listen.
is what's happening. Just so you know, it's because we spend our whole lives being told how full of crap
Yes.
we are.
Right.
Right? It
We have
gets
no
so old.
patience
It
for
gets
it
so
anymore.
old.
We have no
It gets so
patience for it
old.
anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. You should see me in a poker room. Somebody's like, psychics aren't real. I'm like, either are dicks. You apparently don't have one. Like, I just get so mad. Like, I'm just,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
So that's my
Oh my
story.
gosh.
Your turn. Tag,
All
you're
right.
it.
Well, I love that you had a happy ending to yours. Mine is not
Yeah.
necessarily happy ending. In fact, I find that most of the
Yeah.
cases that
Most
I've
are not.
worked on, most of them are not, and most of them
Uh-uh.
have to be in finding the body and
Mm-hmm.
finding what happened, et cetera, et cetera. And
Hands down.
so
That's why I shared this one, because it was the one in my life that wasn't. Sorry.
right.
Yeah.
And so, it always is, again, as the medium, where you're
Yeah.
looking at, and I think there's a distinct difference where you're looking at things and you're getting the layout and you're seeing a
Yeah.
view
Vision.
of things. You have a picture of what's happening. For
Yep.
me as a medium, I connect with the spirit. And so I
Yes.
reach out and I create a link to find that spirit that's out there and invite them to come forward to give me the information and to help.
Got it.
And this particular time, this actually has to do with something that happened in Calgary several years ago. There happened to be a limousine driver who had gone missing. His car was on the side of the road. His clothes were all in the car. His wallet was there, his shoes were there, everything, but he was gone. He could not be
Hmm.
found. And so a family member contacted me and said, can you help? We need to know. We'd like to know what happened, but more importantly, we need to know where he is. He's been missing for 3 days now. And we are uncertain. His cell phone, everything was in the car. Every part of his belongings were in the car. He was not. He was gone.
Hmm.
And so I had sat down and I was like, this was my first time ever. So those
Hmm.
firsts, it's kind of like you said earlier. It's like, when you're all of a sudden you were the virgin and now you're not anymore. I mean, and that was my virgin moment, because I
Yeah.
was in this place of really, again, as you said, only doing this work for a couple of years, working, through 2-3 years, where I'm just kind of, and it's my first time I'm being asked. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know, there can be such pressure in circumstances like this,
Yeah.
because the answers that people are seeking are so needed in those
Yeah.
times. And, it's life or death. I mean, that's really what it
Yes.
comes down to. Right.
100%.
And so I was really uncertain as to whether, but I said, of course, I will definitely sit down and I will see if I can connect with him and see what it is that I can find out for you. And so, anyway, as it turned out, I was able to connect with him. And what he showed me was this was absolutely he had picked someone up from the airport. And this was actually a gang initiation, but he had picked someone up from the airport. He had picked them up. They stopped to pick up another party with them as well. And he was taking them to the location. And they basically robbed him at gunpoint, had him stripped down, take off all his clothes. They beat him. And there was another vehicle came up into that location and came up and they threw him into the trunk and they took him out. Inevitably, they did end up killing him. But to find his body, I kept saying to them, I said, he's not in the city anymore. I said, they've dumped him. I said, they've dumped him. I said, this was a gang initiation. This took place in Calgary, but it is an Edmonton gang where it had gone down to Calgary. They did the initiation. They've driven back. And on the way back, I said, he's showing me the sign of Penhold. And again, for those people who aren't familiar, Penhold happens to be a community along the highways in between
100%.
those two cities.
Yep.
And I said, I keep seeing the sign of Penhold. I said, so he's in that location. I said, but it's very, I said, I want to tell you, he's like beside like the one tree that's in the field. Like there's one tree. There's like, I said, he's showing me a field that's full of trees. I said, there's a lot of brush. It's very, very dense. You would think that would be the place to dump a body, but he's saying that's where there have been even efforts have been done where people are looking, or they've looked in those areas, or if they go into that area will be the area where they're going to be drawn to go look. And he's saying, don't go there. I'm beside the one tree by the highway, just off the highway. It's like it was maybe 400 yards off the highway, one tree. And so she was like, okay. I'm like, I wish I could give you more. I can't tell you.
Do you have any idea how many trees are on the highway?
Exactly. Like there's one, but he's telling me it's one tree and the Penhold sign. He keeps showing me the Penhold sign, then look for one tree beyond the Penhold sign. Just look for one tree. And so she gave that information to the authorities. And of course, as you said, they're not going to put much merit onto it because it's not very exact. I can't give them a definitive on the exact location. I can't pinpoint it based on longitude or latitude
because you can't always.
Because you can't. I can't give them a range road, nothing, because it's not by a range road. He just keeps showing me the Penhold sign, and it was like Penhold, like 10 kilometers or something that was on the sign. That's what he was showing me. So it was somewhere within the next 10 kilometers there'd be one tree and he'd be beside the road. And I said very specifically, and he's on the right hand side of the road. Don't waste your time looking at the left. He's on the right hand side. And so the authorities refused to go and look.
Of course.
So the family said, we're on it. We're going to go personally look at this, Bonnie. And so they did. And I waited. And the next day they contacted me and they said, Bonnie, oh my God, I just have to, we found him. Bonnie, it is the most unusual thing because I can see where the Penhold sign, and I can see all this field full of trees that you talked about. And as we were going, and it was, and honestly, Bonnie, it was only about 400 or 500 meters off the road. It was just there. There was one tree that basically was a twig. It barely had any leaves on it. There was like a stone and a few stones around it, and this one little tree of nothing. And that his body was lying exactly there.
Good job, baby.
Right.
Good job.
And it's like you can't, and when you're, spirit, when you're dealing with them, I mean, and one, he was very kind of, stressed. He was stressed because of what happened. He was stressed because of what his family was going to. He needed to be found. And so him trying to give me any other details, it was like pulling teeth. He was just saying, tell them it's the one tree. It's just one tree. It's 400 yards off the highway. They'll know it when they see it. It's just one tree. And they did. They found his remains.
Well, and the thing that people need to keep in mind, right, when somebody's trying to explain it on a medium side too, when they're trying to share the conversation with you, I mean, think about how we describe things here. right? Like
Yes.
if I was trying to describe to you where I found a body, I'd be like, it's a single tree. You can see the pinhold sign. It's about 400 or 500 yards off the high. Like that's how I would explain it alive. So what
Right.
makes anybody think that you're explaining it different when you're crossed over,
Exactly.
right?
Right.
And I just don't think people understand. I don't think a lot of people understand um, how, first of all, how real our world is. There are so many people that try to debunk it, not nearly as much in
Yeah.
2024 as it did,
Right. As it used to
when I
be.
first
Yes.
started, because they were burning stakes on the front lawn and stuff. But
Yeah.
so many people are constantly trying to debunk this,
Mhm.
like God forbid everybody actually understand that there's something bigger and better out there. I mean, nobody's trying to debunk the fact that God exists,
Right.
right? What would I mean, he's got preachers, he's got messengers all over. What would possibly make you think he's not making sure there's messages coming through too? Like, how does
Yeah.
anybody think the Bible got written in the first place? Like,
Right.
are you kidding me? Right?
Right.
Prophecy existed before any of us did. So
Yeah.
I always find it so fascinating to me. Now I find it fascinating. I used to find it really irritating, but now I find it fascinating because so many people just they try to debunk it. And then people that are even in our industry that are starting, I mean, we teach
Yes.
people how to be successful in the business. And that's the other thing I find fascinating is they're so worried about it. They're so worried, and it limits the information that they're going to give because they're so scared that somebody might have a problem, right? I was doing a
Yes.
session with a woman yesterday, and she's like, well, I think the reason she's not talking to me anymore is because I gave an intuitive answer and she doesn't believe it. I'm like, okay, well, so first of all, she did you a favor, because
Yeah.
if she's going to unfriend you because you gave her an intuitive answer, then you don't want her first and
Right. She's not
foremost.
your friend, not a friend to have.
Easy game to me.
Yep.
Thank you. Right. So that's first thing. I'm like, and the second thing is she's having that reaction to you because you have a problem with the fact that you're trusting your intuition.
Yes.
Right? Like
Yes.
you have a problem with it. What we think about, we bring about, whether it's law of
Right.
attraction, intuition, doesn't matter what it is.
Yes.
But one of the advantages I always had, and I don't know if it's because of this or not because of this, but it's certainly been my advantage. I haven't given a crap what anyone's thought of me since I was like knee high to a grasshopper. Like, I'm a basket case. I'll tell you in advance. You don't need to have an opinion. I'll tell you before you get a chance. I am crazy, a basket case, and I'm a clairvoyant. So have fun with that. Like, right?
I wish I had that
I
that
drink
that
my Kool-Aid.
oh my gosh, that was a big thing for me, of course, in coming forward and overcoming the opinion of other people. Again, we look at, like you said, what you think is what you're gonna become within it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a lot of experiences of things where there was a lot of judgment, there was a lot of
Yeah.
harsh,
Oh, huge.
comments and things coming at, and so, but recognizing as well, it was all coming from inside of me. So we're going to talk about that
Yeah.
on another episode about changing the
We
relationship
absolutely
with
are.
ourselves. We have so much to talk about. Oh my God,
So
great
much.
stories. Yeah, you guys, really,
That
truly,
was
we've
fun.
got
I
more to
hope you
come.
guys enjoyed that. Hope you guys
Yeah.
enjoyed that. Once a month, we'll do another version of stories where we'll talk about, in our office and personal experiences, which I think will help people understand what it's like to sort of be intuitive. And I also love this because it did show, and I'm going to sneeze.
Yeah. Bless you.
Sorry. It did show, as soon as you say you're going to sneeze, that's when it stops. It's like, messing with you. It did show how the medium and the clairvoyant actually do things different, right? Because we
Exactly.
really do, even though we get the same sort of answers, which is really
Yeah,
cool. So we're going
exactly.
to do this sort of version once a month, and we look forward to talking to you guys again really soon. Everybody take care
Yeah.
and have an awesome day. Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
everybody. Thank you.